Today I'm going to help you decide if you should be using a shaver or a razor when you go to shave your head. What's the difference between razored versus shaved? Well, the razor typically will always be electric. Sometimes they will have a plastic guard on it, as well as usually something like this blade here, or a zero blade, which gets really nice and close to the skin, but still not as close as a razor blade will. Now, a razor is going to get extremely close to the skin. It typically looks something like this, you know, your standard razor that you see at most stores, or there are some specialty razors as well. Now, personally, I prefer a razor close shave. However, that doesn't mean that the razor as well as the shaver don't have their positive and negatives. Let's take a look at the list for the razor first. I find that the razor is nice and quick, especially with some of the specialty razors that you can get out there for shaving the head. I also found that it's nice that there's no electric to make sure that it is plugged in or charged up. As well as cleanup, I find with a razor is much simpler, especially when you are doing it in the shower. The negatives, however, to a razor is that if you do have any blemishes on your head, you end up having areas that you can cut yourself on, and that within itself can make a bit of a mess, as well as be a bit painful at times. A razor will also give a bit more of a shine to the head just because it is getting that much closer to the skin. You also have to replace the blades on this no matter what kind of razor you get. You're gonna need to change the blades on it. You can go over to like a double edge blade and save a bit of money there, as well as not be putting plastic into the garbage, but either way you still have the hassle of changing out blades all the time. And of course with the razor, well, you're cutting it down always at one consistent length, which is nothing because you're shaving it off at the skin. And finally, for the razor, you do need to shave at least every other day to keep a really nice close shave on the head. After that, you will definitely be able to feel that it is getting longer. Your head will start looking a little duller. And if you are balding like I am, it definitely gets a bit more noticeable. The pros for a shaver, however, are basically the opposite as the razor ones were. Starting out with the fact that you can adjust how long you want your sides or your top of your head to be simply by using a little switch or a comb attachment. And of course, because you do have the different length option, you do have a few style options available to you. You'll also be able to save a little bit of money using a shaver because, well, you don't have those blades to replace, as well as you cut your hair when it is dry. So therefore, you won't be needing to buy any shave soaps or gels. Now, when shaving your head, you can also do it a lot less. You could cut it down to once a week or maybe even once every 2 weeks, depending on the style of buzz cut that you are getting. Now, although those all sound like really nice, easy maintenance type things, this does have its downfalls as well. One thing with the shaver is that you need a power source. So either you got to have the batteries charged or you got to have the plug be able to be plugged into the wall. There's also quite a bit more cleaning that needs to be done. You need to take them apart here. You need to brush them all out, make sure that they're oiled. Using a shaver is also a little bit more difficult, especially if you're going for a styled buzz cut, because you're going to have to make sure that your lines are all even everywhere because you don't want one side lower than the other, especially when it comes to the back. That can get a little tricky. Now, because it is electric and it's got all the fancy little attachments for it, that means that the price is going to be quite a bit higher than your standard razor is initially. Now, I mentioned earlier that with a razor, there's not any options for styles. However, with a razor, because you do have combs and adjustability on most shaver, you can get some type of hairstyle in there. Now, although there are several different names and types that you can go with, the main three are what we are going to go over today. The first one is going to be induction, and this is what you think about when somebody says that they buzzed their head. It's going to be the same length all the way around and on top of the head. The second type is a burr cut. The burr cut is just a little bit longer on the top than it is on the sides of the head. You can't do really much styling with it because it's basically a buzz cut just with a little bit extra up top. And the third type that we're talking about is, of course, a crew cut. A crew cut is quite a bit longer on the top than it is on the sides, and this allows you to comb it forward or spike it up or even put it off to one side if you wish. Now you might be wondering what lengths you can consider a haircut, a buzz cut. Well, from what I have found, that is basically about a number 1, which is about 1/8 of an inch all the way up to a 4 that sits about a 1/2 inch long. Now, although most people would just consider 1 through 4, I would have to say that on most razors, I would have to say as long as you have the blades all the way up to the very end, or you are using a 0 blade, I would actually consider that a type of buzz cut as well, because, well, you're still buzzing it. As well as you don't get as close as you do with a razor blade, which means that you're going to definitely feel it, as well as it's not going to be quite as shiny on your head. Now that we know the pros and cons as well as some of the style options for these, we're going to go ahead and take a look at balding patterns, because let's face it guys, if we're thinking about going this short, we probably have something going on with the hair patterns. So as you can see on this balding pattern chart, there are a whole bunch of different balding patterns, as well as how bad they can be or how bad they can get. Although I would have to say that a lot of these, you're just better off using a razor on them. I have highlighted here all of the ones that I think that you can get away with doing a shaver fairly simply with one of those 3 styles. And basically what I found out by looking at this, as well as looking at a whole slew of pictures online, if you have a horseshoe balding pattern like I do, you're pretty much just going to want to pick up that razor, because that is going to be the best option for you. Now, if you have a small balding pattern on the back of your head there, I found that you could do a shaver fairly simply, as long as that balding spot doesn't get too large or too thin. I do want to say also that if you've got that little patch of hair up here, but a little bald bridge here, guys, just take the razor to it. Don't try to grow out a little bit of hair to do a comb over, guys. It doesn't work and you're not fooling anybody. I'm telling you what, I have talked to plenty of guys that were really nervous about using a razor on their head because they didn't know how they would look and yada yada yada. It's freeing once you get used to looking at yourself with a bald head, and there are several things that you can do to offset the fully bald head look, but we'll talk about that in another video. Now, although I use a razor on my head now, and I have for many years now, I definitely used a shaver on it before that, when I started realizing that my hair was starting to thin out right on the sides here, as well as my beautiful cowlick I used to have was starting to thin out a little bit, and I decided to go ahead and use the shaver for it. And I'll tell you what, even that was quite freeing, and I was able to pull that off for a couple of years before I decided that it was time just to go ahead and use the razor. So whether you are going to bald by choice or nature decided it for you and you're thinking about using the razor or a shaver, please go ahead and let me know what you decide down in the comment section. I really do hope that this video has shed a little bit of light on some options that you have, as well as the difference and which one you should pick of a shaver or a razor. No matter which one you're gonna pick, you'll probably want to watch this playlist up here about how to properly take care of your head. Down below, that's gonna be a video that you'll probably enjoy as well. As always, until next time, you have a good one.